right, here we go. Hello and welcome to the Scoop. We have a very special guest today. I'm Farah,
And I'm Nicole.
and I would love for our special guest to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about, um, I guess what would be fun is our history and who
Yes.
you are and kind of your passion.
Thank you so much, Farah Sonnenberg. Thank you so much, Nicole Ellis, for the invitation to join your podcast. It's truly an honor. For those of you who don't know my voice, my name is Nasiah Cirincione-Ulezi, and I'm just a human. I'm a servant in disability services. I have been for the past more than 30 years in the state of Illinois. And I have been honored for the past several years to be in community with the Sonnenberg team. I started a few years ago doing some consultation work with the team. And in the past couple years, I have been working on my marriage and family therapy degree and just happened to have a conversation with the leader of the organization, Farah, and told her I would love to come and share all of the wonderful things I've learned on this journey and just be a contribution in the space of really supporting the clinical leaders and expanding skills around reflective supervision towards really collaborating and partnering with families. And I'm here, really to have an open discussion with Farah and Nicole around whatever you feel your listeners would like to hear around this wonderful work that I'm able to embark on with Sonnenberg LLC.
Thank you, Nasia. Yeah, it's been a really fun journey. Just our relationship as it's developed over time and kind of the different areas of need and what you've supported us on. So thank you because it's been truly transformative for me personally. I know I'll let Nicole speak for herself, but for the organization. So I think it's been just really cool to reflect back on 6 years ago almost. And this summer it'll be six
Yeah.
years and just kind of where we're at now and the need and kind of where the company's at too. Um, so so thank you for joining us. Nicole, do you have anything to add with that and where you're wanting to go to with some of this conversation?
Yeah, this has been a wonderful journey, and and that's what it is a journey. And through everything that occurs in the field, having this piece attached to that allows us to get through some challenging times, and to have conversations that produce healthy conflict, and build relationships that are at the forefront of what we do. Um, and just developing relationships with like families and supervisees and peers and all of those elements kind of coming together to form this really happy marriage. And so, I'm really excited for what we're going to continue to do and what this means for the field. And that's where we're kind of dipping our toes into as well, at this point, is what does that research look like and what does that overall development look like and the impact it can have, for many years. So thank you.
That is awesome. If I may, with your alignment, Farah and Nicole, I would like to give a little history of the work and just share a little bit more explicitly what it is we are talking about, because I'm sure by now people's interests have been piqued. So several years ago, I had the opportunity to do a webinar for the ABAI Practice Board. And it was such an opening for me. And what I included in that webinar was my sentiment around the role of reflection in the field of behavior analysis.
Mhm.
So my history, and I've shared this many times, or my professional identity, first and foremost, is a special education teacher. That's where I began my career. And that is really, as a part of my doctorate program, where I got the training in reflective practice and supervision. And I didn't get trained as a behavior analyst until years later. But what I found was this piece, that training piece, made all the difference in the way I approached behavior analytic work, the way I approached working with supervisees, the way I approached working with families. And I was shocked that as I got more into higher ed and training programs, that there wasn't a lot of training in reflective practices, which I was shocked because we're a relational field.
Mhm.
We relate to each other, we're relating to families, yet there is no explicit training in how to really move forward with effective relationships. So, this work around reflection, especially, and this is where Vera and I had that conversation months ago, especially around the work we do with families, is so important because that engagement really is what is going to sustain those positive outcomes that we want to see. So I am excited because what I've happened upon in these later years of my training is information that I think, and I'm honored to be able to collaborate and partner with Sonnenberg to share it. I think it's going to fundamentally shift the field. What I'm seeing is we did a lot of work in the field, probably starting 7, 8 years ago around really messaging. We want to be humble. We want to be compassionate in our work. What was the missing piece?
Mhm.
The language,
Yeah.
the component skills. Compassion is wonderful. And if I have 5 people in a room and I said, tell me what compassion is, I would likely get 5 different answers. So this work is really centering on let's get in some operational definitions around what compassion is, what humility is. Why do we want to do that? So we can replicate it,
Mhm.
so we can teach it to our supervisors. That's what will make it behavior analytic. So it has been, honestly, with this group, I will have to say some of the richest, deepest work of my career.
Wow.
And I really do want to hear from the two of you around your experience, but it's those micro skills
Mhm.
and putting some language to what it is we're actually doing. Compassion is wonderful, but compassion consists of component skills. Humility is wonderful, but it consists of component skills and it requires thoughtful reflection. And when I veer off into reflection, especially with our behavior analytic organizations who all over our country are doing great work and working very hard, but people automatically go to Nasiah, we don't have time. And what I say is, once you take it on, and I want to hear from the two of you, Once you begin to take on reflective practice and supervision, what you'll find is you don't have time not to do it.
Mhm.
So I am excited, and I like what you said, Nicole, about that research piece. I'm looking forward to what research will come out of this, but I'm really, really excited about the conversations I've been able to have with your amazing clinical leaders, the amazing supervisors you have at Sonnenberg, um, who I know are an outgrowth and outcome of your amazing leadership, but who are really taking time to engage in advanced supervisory practice.
Mhm.
So I really do want to hear, and I really want folks who are within your listenership to really get a sense of what's happening here. It's something amazing. And towards the end, I'll share some work that I will be disseminating with some of the other folks in the field who stand for reflective supervision and the relational component of supervision.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm really proud of our team because we've talked a lot about it takes the willingness and the openness to do this work. And the piece you mentioned on time is, yeah, it is work and it is time, and you don't have time to not do it. And until you really can embed yourself into these practices and make it a regular part of your life with that repetition, it becomes a little habitual. Like you can
Yes.
create these systems and practices like that. And so once that's there, every conversation is simpler. Every relationship is easier.
Yeah.
um, Working through maybe problems or that brainstorming or problem solving piece, when you have a system for that, it becomes so much easier to go through. So you actually get more work done, and there's more compromise, and there's more moving forward when you put the relationship at the forefront of
Yeah.
everything that you do. And it allows you, when you have more connection with people, things come so much easier.
Yeah.
And I'm
Oh
not
my
saying that everyone
goodness.
gets along. That's not what I'm saying.
Oh my goodness. You just shared that so beautifully. And I really do desire for people to know what is happening at Sonnenberg.
Mhm.
It's cutting edge, it's powerful, and to just be able to witness it all unfold. One of the things that I've been sharing is in reflection, that looking at oneself in the work, that you as a clinician becoming part of the unit of analysis. What are we doing when we do that? We are prioritizing the relationship, but centering the work. It is so easy in our very, very busy day to drift away from the work,
Mhm.
but when we make that work central, bring it back to what are we here for? That's a game changer. And what I learned is that many people aren't trained to shift the conversation back to the work for a variety of reasons. And that's where those micro skills come in, is really supporting clinical leadership and acquiring those component skills to prioritize the relationships, which are our glue, but center the work. So I really do appreciate the opportunity to share. And at some point, I really, if it's at all possible, would love to hear from the clinical supervisors about their experience because I sit in meetings with them and these amazing human beings are such a powerful contribution to me. Just how they're, and again, this didn't happen overnight. Um, Farah, Nicole, you, and other clinical leaders in the organization have cultivated this level of reflection. It did not. And if we go back, we could track it. But just to watch the growth and the willingness, which is I see as a huge value at Sonnenberg, just the willingness to sit with all that comes in when we begin to look at ourselves, all of ourselves is so amazing.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack here. I've got a lot going through my head. Some of it, like about prior conversations we had, the one that's sticking out in my mind right now is kind of the full circle for me, because I'm one of the dinosaurs, before funding and when it was a psychologist, or psychology was the field. And so you had a doctor working with you in psychology of like that there was no BCBAs. So it was
Right.
very much a different field. And you didn't have I mean you didn't it was just from a different perspective. So you had to sit in and it was about the relationships. It was about the child's, psyche and like their whole being versus BCBA, this is what you
Yeah.
do. This is, da 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 da. So I was kind of, Nasia and we had a conversation before, and I feel like the pendulum always swings one way with most things, and then you're like, wait a minute, we swing really far this way, and then now it's very scientific and very like da 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 da, and so I love this because it's bringing it back to having a whole being and the science is there and the micro skills and all that. That's what I feel like is happening now is we're coming back
Yes.
to that piece that will balance it out. And that's how I'm looking at it and putting it in like layman terms is like for people that are listening or our staff that are listening or other ABA clinicians that are listening, that's what it's doing. It's bringing it back to we're all speaking the same language. This is what this means. It is about relationships and all of that, but it's also separating so it's not taking on a counselor role, so to speak, of like, okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about when we're not clinicians to do so in certain areas with our staff, right? Because it's really easy to do that. And it defines relationship as far as like what Nicole was saying with yes, it's the connections and relationships, but it's also knowing where to say this is outside of my scope and this is let me tell you about where some resources that can help with some of these other things that I'm not that it is outside of my scope. And I think that's important because we definitely as a team didn't quite know what to do with that. Right, Nicole, would you say like that's where we were like, what do we do with this? How do we help and how do we pivot from this so we're being effective clinicians, effective supervisors, but not going in an area that is outside our scope and that we're now kind of giving advice on how to, I don't know, it's more of a therapeutic kind of outside area. I hope that I'm saying that in an effective way, but that's where I think it's really a good balance. Nicole, what would you say about that? Because
Mhm.
would you
I
agree with
think
that?
that, yeah, I mean, I think naturally we're all in this field because we want to help people.
Hmm.
And so
Sure.
I think that pivoted for us when we started talking about the micro skills. And I think that was really important to look at what we now call our guardrails and
Mhm.
what those mean and making sure that we are tacting those for ourselves and recognizing when we need to have those guardrails in place, and also showing that and modeling that for our supervisees or our peers, other team members, because that's going to allow us to, one, it's about bringing awareness to, hey, this is a time in which maybe I'm leading down a more counseling route, or I'm outside of my scope here, or I asked a question that kind of opened up that door for this individual to start talking about maybe some mental health pieces and things like that. And it's not about like avoidance of those, it's about recognizing that this is occurring and then the actionable steps to do after that. So now, what resources do we have to provide that individual so that we can circle back to the work as it relates to performance, and they also get what they need, and we're not ignoring or avoiding those, what could be a difficult conversation.
Or
Yeah,
trying to fix.
Yeah,
yeah,
or trying to fix it or help it,
'Cause I
which
think
you
we
are
like,
helping
yeah,
by making sure that you have those guardrails, in my opinion, because like you could see the impact that would happen in a relationship in which you were both a counselor and a supervisor, or that that was intertwined. That's not in the best service of that relationship, nor is it in the best service of the work. And so when you start to see those pieces too, and you can self reflect on that, you can see where things are pivoting and where they kind of need to go. So you're helping and saying, hey, this is out of my scope. Here's some other resources for you.
wow. You know, this is quickly turning into a CE event.
Ah, yeah.
I re I
and the
really
word is,
and I'm wondering if we could, so can I expand on what Nicole has just brilliantly shared? Because that is a huge part of what is happening. When we begin to talk about taking that pause and build reflective capacities, for many people, what that is naturally going to feel like is counseling.
yeah,
And as we are sharing this, we really work to make sure that people understand the difference. One of our micro skills is normalizing. Let's normalizing that part of our work relationships is that we're going to get into some deep conversation, is that we're going to experience life together, and conversations are going to shift. That's normal. We are not saying that when you go into the workplace, you're not going to have a conversation that's going to veer off into a domain that is very personal, that could potentially be very triggering. No, that is a normal part of what we do. And when we begin to reflect, we notice, oh, okay, this conversation is shifting. That's normal. I now have the skills and my guardrails are up. My guardrails are saying, okay, I am going to pivot the conversation so it is going to prioritize the relationship and center and anchor us back to the work. Because if it goes too far off course, it's hard to reel it back in. Those are the skills that the supervisors are now coming into contact with. And many people I'm finding don't always know readily how to pivot,
right.
how to shift it back. And we initially, the initial word that was used, and Sonnenberg, because Sonnenberg is amazing at this, changed the word, the language. The initial word before Sonnenberg shifted to guardrails was gatekeeping. So with, again, your alignment, I like to share with everybody what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great.
Okay.
Yeah,
The gatekeeping as a micro skill is really, as a clinician, really being a good steward of what's coming in.
We don't want everything to come in. So if you look at the gate, if we open it and everything is coming in, that creates an environment that may not always be effective. It may not be effective towards what it is we want to do. So we do some gatekeeping. We say, okay, I'm just going to notice. I'm hearing, I'm paying attention to what's coming in. And if it's something that's so far away from the work, I have the skills to shift it and pivot to anchor this conversation in the work. So whoever I'm communicating with isn't walking away with very kind of implicit agreements around topics, situations, circumstances that are not rooted and grounded in the work that we do and don't prioritize the relationship. So Sonnenberg again shifted gatekeeping because many people have an understanding of what gatekeeping is, and the word that Sonnenberg chose for the organization and for the clinical leaders is guardrails. So Sonnenberg, well, you know what? Can you share it, Nicole?
Mhm.
Because those were the conversations you were having, and the clinical leadership really said guardrails better captures what it is we're doing. And I'm completely aligned.
Yeah, so the conversations around gatekeeping were the context of it was to that people perceive it as is to like hold on to information and or to withhold information. And so it kind of had this negative piece to it in a way that people were relating to. And so we were trying to figure out ways that met the same need in words that we were familiar with. And so when we talk about boundaries and we talk about that the gate of like not opening up ourselves like completely to have everything come in, and that kind of protective piece was more of the guardrails than completely closing the gate and not letting anything through. So just the concept of it, they related more to guardrails than the gate itself.
It's been great.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, there's been some beautiful sharing in meetings and beautiful reflective capacity is being built. And I'll share this. One supervisor talked about how her guardrails are really high. And let's normalize that. We all come with different learning histories. My guardrails are high, and my responsibility as a clinical leader is to notice, really notice, pay attention. And when we begin to reflect, the most powerful thing we're going to notice in service of prioritizing the relationship, we are going to notice when we're interacting with our own thoughts, and that's driving us, versus when we're interacting with the human being in front of us. When we are interacting with that human in front of us, that is going to create an entirely different experience than us interacting with the thoughts in our own mind. So it's been beautiful to watch, and that willingness of the clinical leadership to really look at how am I relating to the people in my environment? And how is that relating really centered and anchored in the work that we are here to do? It has been a game changer for me to watch it unfold.
Yeah, I wish I could see it all every day, all the different things, because I love hearing about it because I'm not obviously most of those conversations. But it's really fun to be on the inside, but kind of on the outside too, of watching the transformation occur and go, wow, like I'm just watching it happen without exactly know what's going on in
Yeah.
every meeting or what obviously conversations until I do, I mean, I know we record stuff and things like that. So I think for me, as somebody that, I mean, you're meeting with Nicole and Charmaine, and then Nicole separate, and then we have kind of separate meetings and other different things occurring. But for me, I think what has been the most helpful, and Nasia, you had said, I would love to hear what the other leadership has to say about this, kind of how they have felt about this process. So, like how I have felt about this process is it's made it more um, before where connection and relationships are obviously very important and working through that. But, and I would say more is that you would go off on you could go all day, honestly, if you allowed yourself into the relationship piece versus centering it back on why we're there. And that's the game changer and that's why people would say, including myself, it just seems like we're going and going and going and going, and we're not getting to, like, we're still trying to get to, as we would say, the need of what's actually occurring, with that. And it's because we were going off on tangents with the relationship and mental health or whatever's occurring with them versus centering it back on the work and dissecting that. And of course, we're not, that's a game changer, right? Because now you have this capacity of like, okay, so here's what's going on. Let's pivot back to here. And it
Yeah.
could be that something is affecting based off of what's occurring with that person that's affecting to the work. And you can kind of tease those apart, right? That's
Yes.
the games changer because that's where people will say we don't have time, we don't have time. Well, you don't if you're in a therapy session for 8 hours,
That's
you
right.
don't even know how to maneuver through, so that's why, right? So that's what I would say is a game changer. I don't know if that's helpful for people that are
Yeah.
listening, because that's, I think, what the difference is versus us talking about this a couple years ago.
Yeah. So I would say that is, and the game changer for me was being able to come into contact with where people get stuck
Mm,
in shifting the conversation.
yeah.
So what I found is we have a lot of rules when it comes to our guardrails and when it comes to people sharing. And I have heard supervisors say, I just don't want to be rude. I don't want to cut somebody off. I want to make sure people know that I really care about what they're saying. And what we have found in the work is if we start role playing it, if we really start drilling down, what kind of language can we use to shift and anchor back to the work? Just that awareness alone, I have seen shift the way people are interacting with others around really, things that come up, normal things that come up in the course of the human services work we do. I'll be the first one to say, who is the human that has not been triggered in this work?
Right.
Tell me who that human is who doesn't have something come up from their past, something pull on their heartstrings. That's a normal part of the work we do. And a normal part of the work we do is also acknowledge that and where we need to shift and anchor back to the work we're doing here. That is coming into contact with people needing support around that has been a game changer for me.
I love that. I do. Because, yeah, we have fixers and helpers, because that's what we've been trained to do,
Yeah,
is to
yeah,
fix it and help it. And that's why we're all in here. We all know that, right? you know. So yeah, I think that was our conversation back in 2020, was like, I want to help, I want to fix it, I want to make it better,
Yeah,
and so
absolutely. That is a normal part of what we do. We, that's why many of us go into the profession. And I'm going to speculate and just be a bit critical of training. And I'm going to be critical because I stand that our training is going to evolve based on the research that we are all going to share. But I stand that it evolve so our clinicians are equipped to reflect and to shift and anchor back to the work and normalize the relational components and the fact that if you are working as a behavior analyst, you will be triggered in this work. A lot will come up. There are other fields, allied professions, and I've been trained as an educator and a marriage and family therapist. Those professions have something called selfish therapist reflection at the end of each session. Why? And reflection was born in those fields in nursing and social work because the work can be so evocative, so triggering. We're not unicorns. When you're working with humans, and we know this as behavior analysts, our learning history is going to play a part in how we show up.
yeah,
So, what does our science also teach us? What is the first step in reversing any habit? Awareness. And many of us are going into session, working with families, interacting with coworkers with no awareness. Bringing that awareness to it through reflection routinely changes everything. Because with or without the reflection, the stuff is going to be there. But
right.
when we reflect, we take responsibility for
Yeah, yeah.
it. Mhm.
It's just it's so fascinating because if I had myself on video from the first, like each step, I wish I did, like each
Yeah.
step, because it's amazing to think about even our relationship over time and what that looks like in the conversations we're having. I think what I'm very grateful for and what I'll be grateful for the future, because I'll look back at today and say like, oh man, that's what I was thinking back then, and that's how where I was at, and you're just constantly evolving and learning, and which is why I love this, because it's
Yes.
again just growth and just constant, reflecting and looking at like the scenario and how you do get into your own thoughts, how you bring stuff into the conversation or what's going on that day and in that moment, or somebody says something and you're immediately in your head and you're thinking about all this other stuff and you're not even like there. So to have the space to even say and be comfortable enough to say, I'm not here. Like that happens too. Like I'm really stuck
Yeah.
because or
Yeah.
you said this. Can you clarify and what you mean by that? Because this is how I'm taking that. And I'm taking
Yeah.
that because of this, and having these different conversations. That's very helpful, is when people there's that space for that.
It's
There's so much conversation about that, right? Because then you understand why somebody
yes.
feeling or reacting or contributing in the way that they are.
That's, but that's, under seeking to understand, and that's it, Farah. That's the relational piece.
Yep.
That curiosity, that really this work, my thought, it gets you curious and it gives you the skills and the component skills to really get curious about that human in your environment, why they're showing up, how they're showing up. I'm really excited, and I know we only have a few minutes, but I am hoping that this podcast gets disseminated broadly so people will know what this amazing clinic in Wisconsin is doing. But you're in Wisconsin and Illinois.
I mean, yes, but mainly
Okay.
Wisconsin and
Yeah,
then some of the northern, yeah.
this amazing clinic with amazing clinical leadership is leading right now in this work. And so hopefully this gets disseminated so people can come into contact with it and maybe reach out to you, Farah and Nicole, and ask some questions about how this is
Yeah.
unfolding. I hope so. It's really awesome, everybody.
Yeah, we're really excited. I know Nicole, she's been working really hard with all of leadership and Nasiah and in general of really embedding, so excuse me. So it's coming from leadership, like she was saying in the beginning, going down. So it's interacting with the families. So it's a full circle, kind of back and forth. And that's what we're wanting because your clinical outcomes will be at its best if you have that back and forth and that openness and that space to be able to have relationships. I mean, because really that's what it comes down to is the relationships that you're having with the families because they're the experts of their, you know, kids and that's what's important is to make sure that we do have those open relationships. And that's really what this is all about in the
That
end.
is. That is what it is all about. We want to improve our practice in service of those we serve. Um, and I want to add some language to what you just shared for those who are interested in studying the work. It really is rooted in ecological systems theory. It's all of it. It is taking a holistic approach to supervision, not myopic, not narrow, that we influence each other. What is happening in the world is going to have an influence on how frontline RBTs are showing up with families. How RBTs are showing up with our families is going to influence leadership. Yuri Brofenbrenner, ecological systems theory, is very much a part of this work in honoring all of those relationships and how they influence each other and really noticing and being curious.
For sure. Nicole, did I miss anything with that? Because I mean, really, that is our goal, right? Is the best clinical outcomes, you know, possible, and that is how it occurs, right? You have no relationship or very little or a closed or a whatever you want to call that, and you're limited.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when parents don't feel like they're the ones, I mean, they're the ones that know. They're the ones that will be with their children, the caregivers, and that's we're just there, well, short term, we should be, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
idea. So, I don't know if you have anything to add because I know we're really only have a few minutes left. So I just wanted to see if there was anything else in that
Yeah, I
kind
mean,
of thing.
when we anchor back to the work, that's the work. Is the clinical outcomes, is the families, and is their future. And so how we show up as clinicians and how we look inward, and it's all centered around building the capacity to self-reflect allows us to be better clinicians. And that's why we do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Period.
Yeah,
There we
that's
go.
it.
Or
Yeah.
That
dot,
is
dot, to be
That's the
continued.
point of it all. So
that is the I love that. I think, yeah, that's a really nice endpoint. And thank you again. Thank you so much, Farah. Thank you, Nicole, for your openness and willingness. I really am enjoying uh, just working with Sonnenberg and the clinical leaders. And I'm excited. I think at this point in my career, I want to do work that excites me. And this has been incredibly exciting. So thank you. And thank you to all your amazing families, RBTs, clinical supervisors. You are all amazing. And I appreciate you.
Well, we appreciate you. And thank you for joining us. And yeah, until next time, right?
Until next time. Yep.